to part 2 of the How to Create a Consistent Study Routine video series. Last week, we talked about the 3 key elements that must be a part of every good study routine. And they were, number 1, your routine must serve a purpose. 2, it must be made up of clear, duplicatable steps. And 3, it must include a revision. This week, we're going to deep dive into how to decide which learning activities make it into your new study routine. But before we can do that, we must address 2 additional steps that must be a part of every good study routine. And they are a cue and a reward. The cue is the catalyst that catapults you into action. And if you recall in the experiments of the rats, before they dashed in the direction of the chocolate, they waited for one important step, the sound of music. That was their signal that it was time to perform. Every routine needs a cue, or something that triggers the action steps that I'm about to help you come up with in just a bit. How do you decide what your cue should be? To come up with a cue, you need a better feel for your schedule. What are you already doing every day? Where do you have free pockets of time? And are there days of the week that always tend to play out the same? Maybe your typical day goes something like this. At 7 a.m., you wake up, shower, get dressed. By 7:30, you're in the dining hall having breakfast. At 8 a.m., you're in class. At 8:50, your class ends. You walk past the library to your dorm room where you proceed to ignore the reading assignment that you're supposed to do and binge watch Grey's Anatomy for 3 hours until your next class. In this routine, there is an obvious action that can become your cue: walking past the library. The beautiful thing about this is that you're not changing anything about your day. You're just inserting a plot twist, which is your new routine. And your cue doesn't have to be a location like in this example. It can be a time of day, a class, a meal, a day of the week. The cue is important because your brain will become conditioned to performing the steps that normally follow it, especially when you introduce a reward. So your action step is to take a look at your current routine, and is there anything about your routine that can easily become a cue? And what I want you to do is go ahead and head down to the comment section and tell me what you decided your cue is going to be. Every routine also needs a reward, or a rush of dopamine that will create a craving. Studies have shown that cravings drive our behaviors. If every time you accomplished a task, your brain got filled with happy feelings, you'd want to repeat that behavior. Currently, your study routine isn't giving you those happy feelings. When you choose to hang out with your friends instead, you're seeking a certain feeling that your study routine isn't currently giving you. You're actually searching for that next dopamine hit. What is it about hanging with your friends that makes you feel so good? Is it that you enjoy being with a community? Is it that you feel more relaxed, you feel stress-free? The best way to choose a reward is to think about what you always choose over studying. And really think about what that thing is causing you to feel. What about it keeps attracting you to it? And how can you start building those feelings and that attraction into your current study routine? So for example, if you really like being a part of a community, maybe you start putting together a study group, or you place your new routine right before you go and have dinner with your friends every single night, and that can be your reward. Now that you've come up with your cue and your reward, how do you decide which learning activities will make up your new study routine? Well, first we have to think back to the purpose of your study routine. Do you want it to help you stay on top of all your reading assignments so that you're not playing catch up later? Will it help you complete your homework assignments on time so that you don't lose points? Or do you want it to finally help you pass this class? Your purpose is crucial to determining which learning activities make it into your routine. The requirements of your class and the purpose of studying also tell us what steps to include. The reason why we study is to learn what we still don't know about the information that we're going to be assessed on later on the exam, so that we can do something about filling those knowledge gaps before it's too late, you need to know the requirements of your class so that you know how to get an A and how to best prepare. So what makes up your grade? Is it class participation, pop quizzes, homework assignments, exams? What's going to be the style of your exam? Are they going to be multiple choice, essay-based, verbal, open book? All of these things are going to determine what you do when you're studying and preparing. The things you do to study for a verbal Spanish exam are going to be very different than the things you do to prepare for an open book psych exam. When you come up with your learning activities for your new study routine, you have to make sure that you ask yourself, what learning activities are going to help me best learn and test my knowledge on this information? So let's say we want a routine that's going to help us optimize our reading strategy for reading our textbook and also completing the corresponding notes. And our exam is going to be short answer and essay based. What are the learning actions that have to go into a reading routine that's optimized for testing and time? To save time, we don't want to read the textbook like a novel. Instead, what we want to do is hunt for the information that we need to know, or the key points. Looking at the objectives, the headlines, the graphs, the tables, the end of chapter questions, and the end of chapter summary serve as our map or as our guide to all of the need to know and all of the key points. So it makes sense to include going over all of those things as part of our study routine. Answering the end of chapter questions also serves or helps us to test our knowledge, but we can also do that by writing a summary of the section that we just read. This helps us practice writing short answers and organizing our thoughts for an exam that's going to be essay-based. All of these steps that I just mentioned are useful learning actions for the purpose of a reading routine that's optimized for testing and time. Your routine needs clear, detailed steps that are duplicatable. Don't be vague and say things like, I'm going to study for biology on Mondays at 3 p.m. Nothing becomes dynamic until it becomes specific. So what does your study routine look like? Within your routine, you can also include things like meeting with your professor, going to the writing center, or tutoring. I've created an extensive list of learning activities that you can use to create your own study routine. And you can go ahead and download that cram sheet below. So I just shared with you how you come up with the learning actions that make up your study routine. But I can't cover this topic without addressing procrastination, because what good is it to have the steps of a study routine if you never stick to it? Instead of it being a consistent study routine, when you procrastinate, it becomes an inconsistent study routine. So we have to address procrastination. And let's be clear here, there is no cure for procrastination. All we can do is work towards procrastinating less. At the core of your procrastination is a lack of self-confidence and a lack of self-trust, and I'm about to prove this to you. These are my brothers, Jason and Joshua. And when we were really little, Jason would always tell me his secrets, and they would always be silly things like he ate Joshua's last cookie or hid his Pokemon cards. But Jason and I had an agreement that I wouldn't share what he told me with Joshua. But I was playing double agent for Joshua, so of course I always told him what Jason had said to me. Well, one day I was trying to get Jason to tell me his secret, and he blatantly said, no, I'm not going to tell you because I don't trust you anymore. You always tell Joshua. And he was right. My track record had proven to him that I was no longer trustworthy. And in fact, in his eyes, I was a straight up blabbermouth. This is exactly what happens with you internally. Every time you make an agreement to study and you procrastinate, you break an agreement with yourself. Break this agreement enough times and you begin to lose trust and confidence in yourself, just like you would if someone kept repeatedly lying to you. And because you lack the confidence in yourself, every single time you set an agreement, you break it, and it becomes a never-ending cycle until you break that cycle. And how do you go about breaking that cycle? The same way I had to go about rebuilding my trust with Jason. One secret at a time. You must follow through with one agreement at a time. Even if the very next day you break it, it's okay, because you're beginning to prove to yourself that you can do what you say you're gonna do when you say you're gonna do it. This will start to rebuild your confidence. The more times you stick with your new study routine, the faster you'll begin to rebuild your self-trust, and the less you'll procrastinate in the future. The last part of creating a consistent study routine that I haven't touched upon yet is revision. And I'm going to cover this topic when I talk about how a consistent study routine fits into your current study workflow. And that's going to happen in the next video. I hope that you found this video helpful. And if you have any questions about how to create the learning activities that make up your consistent study routine, just leave me a comment below. I'd love to give you some tips and advice and help you come up with the learning activities that you're going to need for your study routine. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the episode of Soulful Study Sunday you just watched. I have so many more study skills and practical college advice in the Rock at College system, a step-by-step blueprint for creating your own study system. Get better grades without the stress, overwhelm, and lack of social life over at rockatcollege.com.